Hello, you're listening to the One Idjit's Thoughts on podcast. I am, as always, Paul Mackey. This month has been crazy. Of course, I decided last month to begin covering 2 episodes of television per podcast in an effort to increase the number of episodes covered. Given the pace of episode releases this month, that didn't actually help all that much. There have been a bunch of things going on, 2 trips, and all the general life stuff besides. Most recently, I spent 6 days on a trip with my daughter to see my alma mater, Montana State University Bozeman, and we took a day-long detour to the Black Hills and Devil's Tower on the way. Sometime during the trip, I realized that even though I had this podcast episode ready to record, I didn't actually do it, and the time was rapidly approaching toward the Dog Days of Podcasting Challenge. I'm not sure if you could possibly be listening and not know the Dog Days Challenge, but just in case, it is a challenge in which a group of podcasters each attempts to put out a new episode each day for the month of August. I'll save the full details of my plan for the first episode, but I'll say, like last year's Dog Days of Advent, it will involve daily trivia. The episodes from all participants will be compiled in a master feed that you can find links to at dogdaysofpodcasting.com, and since I'm not sure when that master feed will actually go live, in case you found this episode that way, welcome! I have 2 episodes of television to discuss this time, and the first one is The Rockford Files, Season 2, Episode 4, Gearjammers Part 2, originally aired October 3rd, 1975. Now, that day of note, Dutch industrialist Tide Herema, who owned a wire factory in Limerick, Ireland, was kidnapped by members of the IRA and held for much of the month. His kidnappers demanded release of imprisoned IRA members. The location of the kidnappers was ascertained on October 21st, and Herema was released unharmed after 2 weeks of siege by local authorities. Apple Records released George Harrison's album Extra Texture, which fulfilled his contract. It would turn out to be the last full album of original material released by Apple Records. At the box office for the week, it was a real shake-up from the previous week. Only Jaws remains in the top 5. Number 5 was Robert Mitchum as Philip Marlowe in Farewell My Lovely. Number 4, James Whitmore as Harry Truman in the one-man movie Give 'Em Hell Harry, which was a recording from a live performance of the one-man play. James Whitmore, you may recall, as Brooks in The Shawshank Redemption. His son will appear in recurring capacity later in The Rockford Files. The number 3 movie broke with sequel titling convention, calling itself Part 2 Walking Tall in its second release. Bo Svensson took over the lead role from Walking Tall's Joe Don Baker. Number 2 was Jaws, which was finally knocked from the top spot by Woody Allen's Love and Death in second release. In the UK, the official charts company lists the number 5 single of the week to be Moonlighting by Leo Sayer. Number 4, Art Garfunkel covering I Only Have Eyes for You. Number 3 was UK revival of the Drifters with There Goes My First Love. Number 2 was Sailing by Rod Stewart, and number 1 was Hold Me Close by David Essex. In the U.S., number 5 was Dickie Goodman's break-in parody song Mr. Jaws. Number 4, Run, Joey Run by David Geddes. Number 3, Glenn Campbell with Rhinestone Cowboy. And the top 2 spots swapped positions with John Denver's I'm Sorry at 2 and David Bowie with Fame back at number 1. All right, so this episode... the show starts with over 9 minutes of pre-show credits and the recap of last week. Jim is finally able to convince Rocky someone is trying to kill him after that bomb goes off. Rocky does some detective work back at Jim's trailer, and Jim locates the trailers from the hijackings, still loaded with their cargo. The mob continues to try to get Rocky, but the jig is up. Rockford and Rocky work out there are millions of dollars worth of Russian sable fur coats about to be shipped, and as a bunch of Pacific and Western rigs pull up to collect the containers, Jim realizes the rigs were what the hijackers wanted, not the previous cargo. They were planning to use the stolen P&W rigs to hook up to the sable containers and just drive away with them. As one of the stolen rigs gets out of the shipyards with a Russian container, Jim and Rocky each steal a rig and go in pursuit, with Jim taking just enough time out to explain the scheme to Becker. The 2 men, not having a container to haul, eventually overtake and stop the stolen rig, allowing the police to take over and make the arrest. Back at the gates, Hamill, the crook overseeing everything and who was also apparently the president of Pacific and Western Trucking, is stopped at the gates, and Rocky recognizes him as the one who was accepting the bills of lading from his friend LaSalvo back at the beginning, which finally ties the whole thing together.
message. I'll get back to you.
Jimmy, it's Angel. Don't pay no attention to my other message. You're out of it. You're clean, no trouble at all. Just ignore the first message.
Who is? Scott Brady was born Gerard Tierney in Brooklyn in 1924. His father was an Irish cop who became chief of the New York Aqueduct Police. He and both his older and younger brothers were actors in Hollywood. He served as a naval mechanic during World War II and later moved to Los Angeles, where his older brother was already getting work on screen. He took the screen name Scott Brady from a boxer character in a friend's short story. He started out in film westerns and moved to TV in the early 50s, continuing to play cowboys or other frontier characters. In addition to guest roles on TV westerns, he played the title role in 2 39-episode seasons of Shotgun Slade. The 60s brought a turn in the types of shows he was performing in, with roles in detective shows like Checkmate, crime drama on The Untouchables, suspense on The Alfred Hitchcock Hour, and legal drama on Judd for the Defense. He continued primarily in action-adventure shows like Adam 12, Banachek, Police Story, 5 total episodes of The Rockford Files, of course this is the second one of those 5, and Simon and Simon. In sitcoms, he turned down the role of Archie Bunker, but guest-starred as Shirley's father on Laverne and Shirley, and also appeared on Welcome Back, Kotter. Lastly, I didn't plan this is just another coincidence, the last TV role for Scott Brady was in episode 17 of Whiz Kids, the last ever produced, though not the last in the airing order. I'll be sure to point him out next time, because that's the next Whiz Kids episode from where we currently are in the order. And if you're still not sure who Scott Brady was, he was the sheriff of a little town called Kingston Falls, along with his deputy Jonathan Banks in the first Christmas summer blockbuster. Before Die Hard, there was Gremlins. That was 1984, the summer after Whiz Kids ended. Scott Brady passed away from respiratory failure less than a year later, in April of 1985. Artifactoids. This is another one where they shoot on Magnolia Boulevard. In the first episode of this pair, they shot at La Paz Liquors, which I of course had noted as being a Whiz Kids shooting location. In this episode, they went 2 blocks west to Magnolia Auto Repair for a scene about repairing Jim's Firebird. This location still operates as Victory Auto Body. And if you go 1 more block west, you'd find Evergreen Studios, which was another Whiz Kids shooting location in Return of the Big Rocker. I found another artifactoid location to talk about, and it wasn't hard to discover. The Vincent Thomas Bridge is seen in both episodes of this 2-parter, but Jim and Rocky actually drive on it in this second part. I'll have something amusing to point out after I look at the bridge. The bridge connects San Pedro on the mainland to Terminal Island. Terminal Island is a largely man-made island in the harbor, divided in control by the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach. Prior to construction of the bridge, there was a busy ferry service between San Pedro and Terminal Island. Vincent Thomas was a California state assemblyman who had started advocating for the construction of the bridge in 1940 and saw through the necessary legislation for over 20 years. The bridge is a 1,500-foot-long suspension bridge, and it was opened in 1963, carrying 4-lane traffic of State Route 47. It charged a 25-cent toll in each direction at the time of filming, which increased to 50 cents in the 80s, but tolls were phased out in the year 2000. Caltrans approved a redecking budget for the bridge, and that project is scheduled to begin next fall. I mentioned something amusing that I noticed earlier. When Jim drives Rocky's truck and talks to him in the scenes of the show, they are clearly driving in both directions over the course of a single conversation, with the background landmarks and road signage clearly visible in both directions. I assume all of this was shot in a single afternoon, and the lighting, aka the sun, was in the west the whole time. What worked? I really enjoyed the action in this episode. The improbable sequence with 2 truck rigs chasing a loaded container truck was a clever choice, and worked out as a fun change from the standard car chases. There was also a lot of good work between the junior and senior Rockford. This includes the scene early in the episode where they both talk through the truck hijackings and work together to try to figure out what the hijacks wanted with the various cargo, and figure out where to look for the loot. What didn't work? As with other Rockford 2-parters, it felt like the second episode was a bit lighter in story than the first part. I think that reason is twofold. It can't be helped that the climactic action set piece has to come in the second episode, but I also blame the nearly 8.5 minutes of recap that started this hour of television. So next time will be Rockford Files, Season 2, Episode 5, The Deep Blue Sleep. But next up on this podcast is Whiz Kids, Episode 16, Father's Day. Happy hunting!
A dog can get mighty hungry when he doesn't get his chuck wagon, because dogs love the soft meat-like chunks, the brown crunchy bits, the rich broth chuck wagon makes when you add warm water. Serve your dog chuck wagon. Chances are he's already waiting for it.
Introducing Macintosh. It does all the things you'd expect a business computer to do. It does a lot of things you wouldn't expect a business computer to do. And it does some things no other business computer has ever done before. Of course, to do all this, you will have to learn to do this. Macintosh from Apple.
So in that break, that was Chuck Wagon Dog Food with the animated model of the Chuck Wagon chased by the dog. I'd like to think there was a better version of this one that captivated my young eyes back in the day, but let's be honest, it was probably this same commercial running a couple of years later that I'm recalling. And then Apple Macintosh. I'm pretty sure the big Super Bowl spot wouldn't have aired during Whiz Kids, but I can imagine this more ordinary spot, where all you need to learn how to do is click a mouse. So now we're looking at Whiz Kids Episode 16, Father's Day, originally aired April 21st, 1984, more than a month after the preceding episode. That day of note, the CDC in America announced that a virus recently discovered in France, later known as HIV, is the cause of AIDS. In media news that week, RCA declared it would stop supporting capacitance electronic disc video discs. There was also an album chart upset. Michael Jackson's Thriller was knocked out of the top spot by the Footloose soundtrack. It looks like Billboard either discontinued the video games chart at this point or at least did not publish it this week. So I'll look at the music videos added to MTV this week according to Billboard. These were George Clinton with Last Dance, Eurythmics with Who's That Girl, Pretenders, Show Me, Howard Jones' What Is Love, and Wang Chung's Dance Hall Days. In the UK, the top 5 singles, as listed in Music Week, were number 5, I Want to Break Free by Queen, number 4, Against All Odds by Phil Collins, number 3, A Love Worth Waiting For by Shakin' Stevens, number 2, You Take Me Up by Thompson Twins, their highest charting single, and number 1, Hello by Lionel Richie. On the Billboard Hot 100, the top 5 singles were number 5, Miss Me Blind by Culture Club, number 4, Hold Me Now by the Thompson Twins, number 3, Hello by Lionel Richie, number 2, Footloose by Kenny Loggins, and number 1, Against All Odds by Phil Collins. So, summary of the episode. Alice falls for the new kid in school, Kyle. Kyle has suspicious men trying to take him to his father, but he does not want to go with them. This gets Richie and the gang to look into the identity of the man who was talking to Kyle. Farley takes the investigation to Quinn, who can't help, and then Carson Marsh, who identifies him as KGB Colonel Androv. It turns out Kyle's father is an American spy, and Androv wants to use Kyle to flush out his dad. In a climactic scene at the high school dance, Richie is able to use targetable laser light from the lighting setup to blind and disable Androv until Quinn can take him into custody. Kyle declines his father's offer to live with him, but he and his mother still must relocate to a new town to preserve his safety. The Who Is query. The actor who plays Stepfather Ben, I have to mention, is named James McCrell, and the reason I have to mention him is from his role as Maddie's plastic surgeon date in the pilot movie for Moonlighting, but we're not looking at a full bio of him today. Melanie Gaffin played Richie's little sister Cheryl, and it occurred to me that I never profiled her. This is in part due to the fact she was solely a child performer who moved out of acting not too long after this role. Melanie was born in 1973 and appeared in a total of 21 IMDb credited roles. Prior to Whiz Kids, she appeared in the movie The Entity, a couple of CBS specials, and an episode of Taxi. Afterwards, she had a role in the John Candy movie Armed and Dangerous, TV roles on St. Elsewhere, Growing Pains, Out of This World, It's Gary Shandling's Show, and The Wonder Years. She also worked in voice acting on Wildfire, Foo Fur, and My Little Pony, the original Not Friendship is Magic. She was nominated for 3 Young Artist Awards, first for her role on Whiz Kids, then a CBS school break special called God, the Universe, and Hot Fudge Sundays, and finally as part of a voice ensemble on Moon Dreamers. She won for the CBS special. I've tried looking into anything that might have happened after her IMDb listings, but I have to assume she left TV and film acting and has maintained a low profile ever since. That week in tech, I looked into laser light shows, and I'm fairly certain the setup used in the show was fantasy. It would be a stretch to have such a light show in a performance at a high school in 1984, even if it was being rented from a professional lighting company, and the show seemed to imply that Ritchie set it up on his own. They did restrict the lasers to simple beam lasers and not the scanning lasers used in planetarium laser shows, for example, but I think it was still one more time when the show was pushing the tech future a little further than was actually realistic. So what worked? It was cool that Alice had a bit more involvement in the plot this time. I think that many times in the series they weren't quite sure what to do with her. The laser light show was cool, though a bit far-fetched like I just pointed out. I thought that the episode did a good job of keeping the audience wondering who among the mysterious men were good guys and who were the bad guys, including Kyle's own father. What didn't work? This definitely was another overwrought attempt at a more high-stakes episode. To my modern eyes, having the Soviets as the baddies week after week feels like it gets a bit old, though I can remember life in the Cold War, and the constant threat of the so-called evil empire being a constant presence, at least in perception. I didn't really feel like the performances were all that great overall, but at this point I believe they were fulfilling the order of episodes knowing that they were the last, and it may have been difficult for the actors to bring their A-game. So next time is Whiz Kids episode 17, Altera, which is the last episode shot, but not the final episode aired. Happy hunting! You've been listening to the One Idjit's Thoughts On podcast, produced by Paul Mackey in association with Nimlas Studios. Any short clips of audio from shows is included under fair use for commentary purposes, and copyright for that content remains with its original copyright holders. The theme song is Too Good by Jack Mangan and is used by his generous permission. One Idjit's Thoughts is produced under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. You can find more episodes of this podcast and many other fine podcasts at nimlas.org. You can contact me by emailing idjitcastpodcast@gmail.com or commenting on episodes at nimlas.org. You know, that's some insurance company Jim Rockford had back in the day. These days, they just declare that exploded car totaled and move on.